Good evening and welcome to our Community Town Hall. My name is Brian Doyle. I'm the Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations here at Norwich. And I'm coming to you with our President, Lieutenant General John Broadmeadow from the Class of '83, and the Chairman of our Board of Trustees, Al Gobay from the Class of 1986. We're in beautiful Woodbury Hall this evening. It's a little bit hot, so if we start sweating, it's not the questions, but just the climate. This evening's town hall is oriented specifically on strategy. Our newly developed and published strategy, hopefully you all saw that in the links that went out, and also kind of an outbrief from the Board of Trustees meeting last April. We got a lot of questions in, and if we don't get to your question tonight, I or a member of my staff will get back to you with an answer to each and every one of the questions that were submitted, and we thank you for that. With that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant General Broadmeadow.
Hey, good evening, everybody. It's great to be here with you. I think this is my 5th town hall in the first year. For those of you that don't know, I just passed 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day today. So happy to be in the seat. It's been a great year. I appreciate everybody's support. The alumni have been just terrific. I have really enjoyed working with the faculty, the staff, here on campus, and I'll tell you, since graduation, I really, really miss having the students around. It's a completely different campus when the students aren't here. I'll just start this by saying we just finished a busy few weeks. We had my inauguration ceremony. The staff and the faculty turned out a great ceremony in that regard. I hope you all got to see it online. It's been posted out there in a couple places, but a great nod to our academic tradition. Right after that, a week after that, we had graduation. It was a terrific commencement ceremony, and the Governor Scott came out as our graduation speaker. If you have not seen his speech, take a look out on C-SPAN. It's out there along with a number of other notable speeches around the country. He did a fabulous job and spoke to our students in a great way, and our students did us proud. The way they looked through graduation and through the commissioning ceremonies was terrific. Sandwiched in between the two of those was our Board of Trustee meeting, where Al took over as our chair, and I'll just add a personal note, has grabbed the reins from Alan DeForest, who did yeoman's work for our university for many years, and Al didn't skip a beat in his first meeting. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Al and have him make some opening comments.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Brian, for the introduction. Good evening to everyone. First, I'd like to say thank you to the staff of Norwich. If you were lucky enough to drive around Northfield today, Norwich looks absolutely beautiful. Yeah. I don't know if it's the rain we've had or just the weather, but it's just gorgeous. Second, I have to say thank you to the faculty. You are the spiritual guide of what we do here at Norwich, and we never want to forget that. Third, to the students, you're our why. You're why I chose to get on the board, you're why I chose to serve as chair, and you're why the trustees work so hard, and you should know that. And last but not least, I want to thank all the alumni watching tonight or watching at the time that you can. You are our legacy, and I really appreciate all the support I've received from all of you, and I will appreciate getting together with you in the future. Just a few quick comments. Coming in as the chair in April was an honor. Being able to be at the inauguration of John Broadmeadow as our 25th president was just absolutely an awesome event, and it was something that everyone that has gone to Norwich, goes to Norwich, or works with Norwich should be very proud of. I'll also say that the work that we've done to begin to build a strategic plan in addition or an addendum to the one that we have now is going very well, and you'll be hearing more about it. It will be a very inclusive and engaging process, and so stay tuned. You'll probably hear more about that in the future. And the last thing I'd like to say is that there was a moment on graduation day that I want to share with all of you. And that was when our cadets took the oath to become officers in the different branches of the armed forces. Earlier in the day, they received their diplomas, and it was joyous, and they were young, and they were youthful, and it was wonderful. And as John said, the governor's speech was fantastic. But when they raised their right hand and took the oath, it was so powerful. They were no longer the young, carefree folks they had been only a few hours earlier. They were the officers that they were becoming. And it really moved me, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you try to attend one. So that's pretty much all I have for the start, and so we can turn it back to the two
Well
of you.
said. Nice reflections on graduation.
All right. Well, before we get to the heart of it and go back and talk some more about the strategy, want to kind of set the table. And we got a number of questions wondering about enrollment, where we are with the incoming class is probably a good place to start, and then retention for the current students.
Yeah, so I got to be careful because I'm optimistic, and sometimes optimism can come back and bite you. But I will tell you, I'm going to start by saying I'm really proud of our enrollment team. It is, yeah, I had no experience with college enrollment over a year ago, right? I thought I did as a trustee, but until you're in the seat and watching them do it firsthand, you really don't have an appreciation for it. The impression I want to leave you is we have a fabulous and absolutely terrific enrollment team, led by our Vice President for Enrollment. Kim Riley has really changed how we do it. We have this program, and you'll see it in our strategy, called Start Ready. And it's a very personalized process. Those of you that have heard me talk before know that this shift, this personalized shift, is very important. So where are we? Started out with a little over 3,000 applications. I think we're down to the crunch time right now. And I'll start this by saying it's a little bit different this year. So it's hard to compare year in and year out. But the good news is we have over 800 bona fide deposits for students that have said, we're coming to Norwich University. So that's an absolutely great number. But it's going to melt, and we know it's going to melt. Here's a couple things that are happening a little bit different this year. With some of those numbers, we've taken a look at what we call a fifth quarter award, and Kim is reevaluating, some of our financial aid packages that we're given. We're entertaining some requests even beyond our normal cutoff dates because we're enthusiastic about this class. But we're not alone in doing that. There's a lot of other schools, and this is a difference this year. Normally, the 1st of May-ish is about the cutoff time, and students commit. What we're seeing now is a lot of this jockeying among schools still going on. But our numbers are up this year. We're talking in excess potentially of we're certainly above 400 for the Corps of Cadets. Billy McCullough will tell you he wants to see that number for the new incoming freshmen. Our new rooks start with a 4, and I've got a level of confidence we're going to hit that this year. So it's looking good, cautiously optimistic. Supporting those deposit numbers, we're seeing the numbers of things like the math placement test up. We're seeing housing applications up from previous years. So I think we're looking pretty good.
That's awesome, and it puts us in a really good position for next year.
I wanted to finish before that sneeze came out. Sorry. Yeah.
The next piece, of course, is retention, and talking about how many of the current students are we expecting to come back.
Yeah, so this is a much harder one to judge. We're tracking about where we've been historically, and we've been on a pretty good trend here over the last couple of years. So right now we're in the high 70s for what's coming back. That's good. But as with basic enrollment, take that in the context of what's going on around higher ed today. The national narrative, college is expensive. Do you really need to go to college? That's still there. You take that along with a lot of the turmoil that's been going on by some of the things that the new presidential administration is anticipating and potentially trying out. It's created a level of uncertainty. We're dealing with it well. We, again, like with our enrollment, we've got a very personalized process to retain the students that we've had. And our numbers are trending in that upward direction again. So high 70s is a pretty good place to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's probably worth noting that we ended up graduating a total of 223 cadets,
Yeah.
of which 110 commissioned and 443 civilians. So
Yeah, that's great. So I will say, so some of you will take what I just said and say, well, wait a minute, the numbers for the whole student body are down next year, right? You know, and they're going to be. We know they're going to be, no matter how good we do, because that class that just graduated is our biggest class that was here at the school for all 4 year groups. And it'll be bigger than the class that we bring in this year. So total enrollment will go down, but we'll talk budget, I think, in a little bit.
Yeah.
We've actually planned for that, and that's part of the national trend that you're seeing across the board.
and I probably didn't set that up right because the 443 civilians include CGCS.
Yes,
And we
yeah.
didn't touch those.
Yeah, that's a
numbers,
great
so,
point. Yep,
Yeah.
that's a great point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, great. Speaking of CGCS, any comments on that as we move forward?
You know, I know you're going to ask a question about budgeting later. Maybe we can talk a little bit
Sure.
about it there. But I'll just give you the bottom line for CGCS right now. We're doing good. You know, we're about breaking even, right? And we like that. More importantly, we've got a lot of good initiatives going on. We've tied in really well, not just with the SOF community, but which we have, the special operations community. We're a good mix for them. But across the board, we're finding, you know, particularly younger enlisted folks like some of our associates programs that we're doing. We've made some good inroads with the military and CGCS. I'm optimistic that we'll be on a pretty positive trend. At the very least, we're breaking even financially. It's contributing a little bit to the school in terms of you know, our revenue, and I think we're going to see that grow in the out years. So.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll switch gears here a little bit and we'll talk finance.
Okay.
Big question about the endowment. How is our endowment doing, and how has it grown over the last year?
So I don't like the question, how has it grown over the last year? So right now we're at about 285 million for the endowment. I'll just say that. I don't think the trustees will beat me up too bad on saying that, right? And that's the number that we're seeing today, and that's what we can officially talk about 285 million dollars. Obviously, the market's going up and down, a lot of turmoil out there. One of the things I will say that I have learned over this past year is we have a group of trustees and non-trustees who manage and watch our investments for us that have some eye-watering credentials when it comes to managing finances. And I have learned that not only is it well managed, but we're well diversified. We're in all the right places for a university to take advantage of the kind of endowment that we have. I'll tell you, as you look across the nation, we're trending slightly above where most schools our size are in terms of endowment. We're doing a lot better than a lot of other small New England colleges. So about 285 million, that's a good number to use. We have a lot of lagging reports that come out of it, but more importantly, it's a very well managed endowment with good diversification, and we're taking advantage of the markets and some private equity in places where we should be doing it. So.
Great.
I don't know if you want to add anything on the endowment.
The only other thing I would add is a lot of people have heard of the endowment tax or the idea of an endowment tax. In our current evaluation and scenarios that we've run, we would be under the numbers that they're talking. And so it's not something we would have to deal with right away. But it's not sure yet how that actually would be enacted. So kind of a wait and see on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. But again, a nod to our great trustees, as well as Leroy Young, our CFO, have really been proactive. While we don't anticipate being subject to the tax, they're not taking it for granted, and they're doing a lot of contingency planning, you know, both between the CFO and the trustees, as well as across the staff. We ask ourselves the hard what-if questions. What happens if we get an endowment tax? What happens if we lose grants or things like that? We do a lot of scenario planning. We spend a lot of time, and I will give huge props to our CFO in particular. Leroy has done a great job of not just managing the budget, but he is very proactive in looking at what could bite us, and let's make sure that we don't get surprised.
So when you came on a year ago, sir, it was pretty well publicized that we were running in a deficit.
Yep.
Is that still the case? What's the outlook for this year?
So I jotted some numbers down. I ran over to the computer in my home office here just before we did, because I wanted to make sure I got this right. So for those of you that don't understand the rhythm of university finances, 1 June is the start of our fiscal year. So we closed out at the end of May. So when I talk about last year's numbers, fiscal year 25, bear with me a little bit, because we're still closing those books out, and there's still a lot to be done before we publish the absolute final numbers. But where we were for last year, about 94.3 million in revenue. That's not bad. That includes that is what we call our net student revenue. All of those things we bring in from tuition, from scholarships, from ROTC and those kinds of things, along with grants and other things that we bring in. So on campus, about $94.3 million. With CGCS and all of our expenses and everything else, we came out with a positive $100.03 million. So just over $1 million to the positive. Now, I want to caveat that. Remember, I think one of you opened up with the fact that we're drawing out of the endowment a little bit more than we want, right? So this year, or this last fiscal year, we drew 7% out of the endowment. We want to be at 5%. You've heard me talk an awful lot about that. So we took about $4 million more than that 5%. So while we ended up with $1 million positive, we really drew about $4 million more. Now you can look at that in a couple different ways. What that means is we budgeted to a number and we hit our budget with about $1 million extra to that. We use that money now to help cash flow for the next fiscal year. Let me put that in perspective now as we look at this year. So remember, last year I said about 94 million in revenue. Next year we're planning on about 97 million in revenue. So we're anticipating revenue going up. As we do the budget for fiscal year 26, we just broke even, and that's how we plan it, right? We plan our expenses to about what we figure our revenue is going to be. Again, though, we're dropping from the 7% draw we did last year to 6% this year. So we've got about 2.5 million, just under 2.5 million more out of the endowment before we get to that 5%. So I'm hoping that with our optimistic enrollment numbers, with some of the other things we're doing in terms of grants and maybe some CGCS increase in revenue, that we'll actually do better again this year and close that draw number even more like we did this year. That's our goal, and we're going to watch our budget through the year to do it. So a lot of numbers out there, but a lot of you have asked me for that kind of detail. So I hope, bear with me on that. That's about as clear an explanation as I can give, but I know a lot of you want that detail. The bottom line is we're doing really well. We're budgeting well. We're hitting our budgets. We're hitting our revenue targets. And we're knocking down a lot of expenses that have languished for a little while. One other thing I just want to bring out, and I would like you to comment on it too, on the budget too, Al, as you're stepping into this. For next year, my priority in terms of expenses is to increase the salaries for our employees across the board. We've had a number of years now where we either had very low increases or we've had a number of folks that have gone without salary increases for, in some cases, over 2 years. This year, the Board of Trustees worked with us to make sure that we were able to give every employee 3.5% pay raise. You can call it a cost of living allowance, you can call it a salary adjustment, but everybody right off the bat is getting a 3.5% raise. and I don't know if you want to talk about. We're hoping maybe to be able to do more, depending upon what we do too. So.
Yeah, so just a couple high-level comments. First of all, fiscal discipline is very important to a governing board. We are not the management team. We are not part of the administration. We're here to govern, and we're going to meet 4 times in the next calendar year as a board. The committees will meet a lot more frequently, but it's just a tremendous advantage if you can rely upon the management team to deliver fiscal discipline. And so I applaud what's happened, and I'm hoping as we sit here near the old ski hill, we're going to be skiing the moguls with everything we have going on at the federal government, and we all need to know that. We're going to have to adjust, and the scenario planning has been great, and we need to continue that. But it is going to be a difficult time, and so everyone watching, you can expect there to be adjustments, and hopefully we can explain in detail. The second thing I'll say is that I applaud John and the leadership team for what they've done on wages. That's something that I support as chair. It's something that the board supports and that we think is very important, and we hope to do more in the future. And so, we'll be working on that. The last thing I'll say about budgeting is, when you look at I have to give a shout out to Kim Riley. When you look at the numbers of the incoming class, there's all sorts of storms at sea all over the country. We've got to deliver for Norwich, and my fingers are crossed that her good work and everyone else's. It's a whole team of people. It's not one person, but that they deliver, and we move to a better place with at least the freshman class number. So.
Yeah, thank you, Al. I'm going to have a million emails tomorrow morning about when we're opening the ski hill.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Maybe late October.
We can set a contribution limit that allows us to get at that. I don't know if anybody will hit it, but
You touched on it a little bit, sir, but the income from CGCS.
So we're truly, the best way I can say it is right now we're in a break-even proposition for CGCS. We'll probably do about $125,000 back into the full Norwich budget for that. Could we do more? Yeah, but we could also be doing less. Right now, I'm very happy to be breaking even because our Karen Gaines, our provost, has laid a lot of good groundwork on the future potential of CGCS, and I'm very happy that where we stand. So I'm happy. The board probably is not as happy with me, but I am happy that we're breaking even and we've got great future potential there. But about $125,000 is what it contributes to the bottom line. A lot of that, though, is something we adjust, right? And we control. So.
I was sharing with you earlier. I was amazed at I went to a career fair at Camp Lejeune with James Breckenridge, who's doing a lot of our outreach.
He's doing some great outreach.
And the associate's degree program that's now being offered is just outstanding. And I had no idea about it before we started talking. And as I watched him talk to young Marines and explain to him this process, you could see the lights go on. I think we got something exciting there for sure.
That's good. I'm glad you were talking about lights going on for Marines. We have a lot of back and forth about soldiers and Marines between Brian and I. So,
the other one that people are interested in is Nuwari and what that brings to the bottom line.
So Nuwari is a great organization. Let me just give some props to Phil Sussman, who's the president of Nuwari, who's made the decision to retire. And Nuwari is in the process of looking for a new president now. So if you have not seen the recruiting announcement for the new president, please find it out there on our LinkedIn pages and Nuwari's LinkedIn pages, and pass that on, because we really want to get some good candidates applying for that job. It's an important position. Nuwari gives back to the university in many ways. The first thing it does for us, and probably the most important thing in my mind, is it creates great experiential learning opportunities for our students. Phil and his team have great connections throughout the government, in particular, the cyber world especially, and I've witnessed firsthand a lot of these programs that Nuwari works to bring onto campus to give our students some experiential learning opportunities. The second thing they do is they give our faculty opportunities to participate in research. They are Norwich University Applied Research Institute. A lot of our faculty benefit from the kinds of programs that Nuwari brings in to get research done, and quite honestly, expand the knowledge base of our school. They bring in a little bit of a financial hit for us as well. Last year in particular, they gave great foundation to both the General Al Gray Scholarship as well as the General Gordon Sullivan Scholarships. Terrific foundations for both of those scholarships that'll benefit students well down the road. So that's my thought on Nuwari.
I think you're right, Anna. The only thing I'll add is we just broke ground on a $16 million cyber fusion center. And
Great
so,
point.
so all the alums, when you come back, hopefully you'll all come back at Alumni Weekend or any other time, and you'll be able to see the work that's underway. That's a big deal. And a big shout out to Senator Patrick Leahy from Vermont, who did an awful lot to get the appropriation for us. So. Yeah, that's a great thing.
Another example of the great relationships and strategic partnerships that Phil Sussman and his team have done for Nuwari and Norwich.
Absolutely, and I'm just really optimistic that the hiring process is going to go well. And Rob Lindefeld, my classmate from 1986, also a bio major, is leading the search on behalf of Nuwari, and so shout out to him and hoping that goes well.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to shift gears again here. We're going to talk about the strategic plan, and we promised that we were going to hit some hard balls. I don't know how it felt to me to be the one to ask the first question to our new chair that comes out like this, but I'm going to serve it up anyways. The strategic plan lacks precision. I know it's a 3-year plan. Can you expound on who was assigned what different parts and what are the measurements there?
Yeah. So. First of all, you should ask me any question because this is the hot seat. and I think it's literally 100 degrees in here right now, so it's literally the hot seat. But let me say this about the strategic plan. So a typical strategic planning process for a university our size is a 12 to 18-month endeavor. Everyone tries to shorten it, but the process then never accomplishes what they hope for. So these are lengthy, these are engaged, involved undertakings with, the entire campus community, alumni, the town, et cetera. That's not what we did in this strategic plan. When John hit the ground running, he realized that we did not have a strategic plan, number one. We needed a strategic direction for the management team, the administration. And third, you need this for accreditation that we have this summer. And so I think John and the team did a great job of putting together, through an abbreviated process, a 3-year strategic plan that lays out 6 domains for us to do the work that we know we have to do for the next 3 years. And I would actually say, what was the word that was used in that? It's a
lacks precision.
Precision. I think it's actually too precise. Meaning it isn't as visionary or as high-level strategy as what I'm hoping to do over the next year to year and a half. It's really right above tactical. And so, to the great question of how are you going to measure it? Who's responsible for it? We could go through that bit by bit. I won't do that here, but the way the plan is laid out and then the documents that are attached to it, you can see exactly who's responsible for what and how it's going to be enacted. We didn't want to put all of that in the strategic plan because that's tactical.
Right.
But you should be comforted to know that we have that background work. We can share some of that. But what I'm really excited about is getting that work done, and then also in the background starting this new strategic plan for the next 3 to 10 years of where we go. In light of all the things we've just talked about that we're facing.
Right.
So I'll stop there on that question, but I'm sure we're going to talk more about the strategic plan.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll add on that is, Rich Snyder used to say, and I think it's a great saying, that vision without resources is hallucination. And I think it's a great, that's one of my favorite lines. It's important to note that what's in this plan are things that are already underway. Importantly, things that the Board of Trustees has already funded. As a for instance, the transition of our backbone IT system, where we're moving to something called Banner Software as a Service. It's an upgrade to some of the things that we're doing, but it's also an expansion where we can bring more of our data in line with how we're making decision making and become much more oriented on that. The board has already funded that effort. There's already a project underway to do that. So there's not a lot of new in here. I talked earlier about the Start Ready program as the new way that we're bringing students in the work that we're doing, the enrollment program. That's now codified in the plan to say, this is how we're going to do enrollment. Most of what you see in that plan are things that are already underway, already approved and resourced by the Board of Trustees, and have the backing of the administration and the faculty and the staff. So,
Fantastic. The next kind of question that leads into this a bit is they've heard that there's a plan to reduce the size of the Board of Trustees. Should this be done, how will you do it, and what size board are you aiming for?
So said lovingly, I don't think any chair should walk in the door and talk about getting rid of trustees. So I'm not going to do that. What I will say is that if you have ever been a part of a board that is for a publicly traded company or a for-profit company, you might have 9 board members or 11 board members. If you've been a part of a chamber board or another type of nonprofit, you might have 18. But universities are notorious for having large boards. Some have 55 board members. We, on our bylaws, have up to 35. Currently, we have 28, including John and I. And I think the better question is, how do you organize the board so that the board feels engaged, involved, that they feel that we're grateful for their service and they're being put in a position where they can serve to the best of their ability. And candidly, that's really done through committees. And that's where the real work happens. And so the real question is, how do we want to handle our committee structure as we move forward? As I said earlier, we've done the bylaws. We changed some of the ways we look at our committees. A great example would be audit. Audit used to just be financial. Now it's more complicated. It's risk. It's cyber. It has to have a broader view, and so the committee has to change, and it did in the bylaws. But I think that folks that are watching should expect to see changes in our committee structure over time as I work with the trustees and we inform each other. So no plan to do anything with the number, but a lot of plans to try to do everything I can to listen to my teammates and see how we can be the most effective.
Great.
we did a program this last weekend with an organization called AGB, and they run their own institute. And Al and I got a chance to go down there together. It was a fantastic opportunity to hear about board professionalization, and I'm going to give props to our chairman. He was a rock star there. He did a lot of studying in advance, but more importantly, he asked some very good, pointed questions about how do you do good governance for a university in today's environment. So, having spent the weekend together, part of this week, really digging in on it, I've got a lot of confidence that our chair's really thinking very deeply about how does our board govern this university effectively.
Fantastic.
Thanks, John.
All right, sir. We got a couple questions that we're asking about lawsuits. Have they all been settled? And if not, when will they be?
Yeah, I think we got 2 open lawsuits right now. It's inevitable that you're going to get those kinds of things. we're never going to talk about, the lawsuits. No professional organization should do that, and we certainly aren't going to talk about that. But we're actually in a good place right now. I think there's only 2 open. I think we're fine. Yeah, we're doing all right.
Very good. Kind of circling back to some of the enrollment type questions we had. The stated goal is 1,400 cadets plus 1,000 civilians. In the event the 1,400 cadet goal cannot be reached, will the civilian population be increased to meet the total desired number?
We'll take any student we can get on board. I talk about it a lot, right? I talk about those numbers a lot. I think very deeply about, one of the things they challenge you on as a new president is understand your niche, find your niche. And a lot of my counterparts are out there scrambling right now, trying to redefine who they are because the environment has changed. I want to tell you right now, I'm not doing that. I know who we are. More importantly, our folks know our whole community, our alumni, our faculty, our staff, and particularly our students know who we are. The Corps of Cadets has been and will be central to what Norwich is. That's why it was founded. But for the last 50 years, we have had a civilian component that is absolutely critical to what we want to do. I would like to see the Corps of Cadets numbers grow. I would like to get to that 1,400 number. But every single civilian we bring in is as vital to this organization, is vital to the vibrancy of our on-campus population. They contribute in the classroom, on the sports field, and everywhere else. So just because I talk about wanting to get to 1,400 in the Corps, it recognizes the essence of the school, the heart of what our school was founded around. But every student is critical to this university. And I've really learned that this year. I've been married to a civilian student for 41 years now, right? So I have huge respect for civilian Norwich graduates.
Good answer.
But one of the things that I've learned this year, and I just used the phrase, they add a vibrancy to this campus. Yeah. It's a lot of fun when you see the Rook class, especially when they first get here and they're squaring corners and yelling all the stuff they yell and saluting everybody in sight. And then the next thing you know, you get a civilian student walking by in their pajamas, on the way to class, and that's the way they do it. But the contributions are equal, and I will take every single one of them on. I would never turn down any student that is a good Norwich student. We want to recruit. We don't want to just recruit any student. Okay, just like I've said before, we don't want to just recruit any athlete. We want to recruit the right Norwich student, the right athlete that fits what we want here at Norwich. Right. Somebody that we can adapt into a responsible citizen for our nation. And you see it in our core students, and you see it in our civilian students as well. So if you are the right fit for Norwich, we want you to come on board.
So I'll add that I think that when you're going through tough times, chaotic times, or maybe a demographic cliff like we're seeing with the 2007 kids that were born, 2006, 2007, 2008, as it moves forward, we're going to see less kids, particularly in the Northeast. You lean on your mission. You lean on your values. And I think John said it so well. We need Norwich students, civilians or Corps cadets, people that are interested in putting service before self, people that are thinking and wanting to be productive members of the Republic. That's our mission. Yeah. That's what we do. We stick to it.
Yeah, well said. That's awesome. Very well said. All right, the next one is near and dear to my heart, and it's one of the staples of.
I'm trying to see them.
Yeah. By the way, I can't see these, and they're not on here, so it's like, go ahead.
It is part of the strategic plan, and it's alumni engagement.
Yep.
And the question has to do with alumni clubs, and do we plan to grow them? And if so, do we have a goal? And then my favorite one is, what do we want from our alumni clubs? I'm taking notes.
Well, and I could almost turn this back on you. And again, it sounds like I'm passing out compliments here today, and I mean everything that I say sincerely. So how long you been on board now? 9 months, 10 months? So
Yeah, 8 months.
8 months. I feel like you've done more than just 8 months worth of work, and I mean that. Brian has brought a tremendous level of engagement to our alumni program, our donors. I'm very confident. I look real smart because I picked a pretty good guy for this one, right? You've really done well, and I'm going to compliment you on that. I think there's a vibrancy around our alumni. I felt it last year at Alumni Weekend. Maybe it was just coming back, being here as the president. But I think it was more than that. I think our alumni, I think there's an enthusiasm among our alumni that I see growing, and you're contributing to that in a great way. Do I think alumni clubs are the way ahead? I'm not sure. I'm going to be real honest. Yes, I would love to see clubs get going. But I'm going to reach back over 40 some odd years of my experience here at Norwich, and I'll refer to my wife again. I can't tell you how many clubs Karen walked into while I was out and about on different deployments, and tried to either get them going or revitalize them, and they wax and wane like any other effort out there. So would I like more clubs? I'd love more clubs. I would like alumni showing up every single month at that club's lunch or dinner or get-together that they have, talk about Norwich, bring prospective students in and tell them good stories about going to Norwich, not the Norwich myths that are sometimes out there. But yes, I would love clubs. But I'm going to be realistic here. You've got a challenge in front of you. If we're going to come out and say, yes, I want a lot of alumni clubs. Sometimes you got to look to other things. I'll give some props to Fins and Feathers, right? They changed the dynamic in a lot of ways, right? It wasn't they said a bunch of guys that said I don't golf, right? I don't I don't want to go to the monthly luncheon. So what did they do? They shook it all up, and they created a deep sea fishing outing. They created a shooting outing. Yeah. So do you want to call that a club? Probably not. But is it effective? I guess what I'd say, Brian, is I'm after anything that brings our alumni back into the school, creates a sense of excitement about them, whether that's a monthly luncheon in Washington, D.C., and that's one that I belong to, and it's a great organization. They're doing a lot of really good work. Or it's a Fins and Feathers outing, or now we've got women kicking glass that are trying to, we've got a bunch of our alum that are trying to raise some excitement in that lane. I'm after whatever brings our alumni to the table and says, we love Norwich. I want to give you my time, talent, and treasure.
That's great. And I would say, answering my own question, but I don't think we should be tied to the traditional notion of what an alumni club is. Because it's not for everybody, and the volunteers put a lot into it. It doesn't have to be a monthly meeting cadence. It doesn't have to be you do these things. We had a really cool event in December in Charlotte. We were celebrating Shane Letty, who got a fantastic award in football. Yep. And we said, hey, well, let's do a pop-up alumni event in Charlotte. And we brought in all sorts of folks who had never been to a club event before. Yep. And I personally would like to do more of that. And so I say to all of you listening, if you want to try it, you want to try to spark something in your area, we can probably help. We can work out a plan and maybe do a one-off, and maybe that catches fire and you have a lasting club. But we can try it on for size.
I think that's great. I turned around because I got a Shane Letty autographed football right next to an autographed 1911 football sitting up here. So yeah, that was a great event. Good point.
All right. We're going to change topic a little bit. Kind of a hot button cultural topic. Given the current federal administration's stance on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and knowing that our university values international students, LGBTQ+ programs, women's education, and military programs, how is the university planning to navigate the presence of these essential programs amidst potential changes or challenges to federal funding and policy?
You want to jump on it? Or you want me to?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
So whoever asked this, it's a great question, and it's a question we're going to have to answer kind of repeatedly as things evolve, because it's not totally clear, everything the federal administration is doing. But what I would say is this. When I came to Norwich, I wanted to feel like I belonged, and I did. And I would want any young person that agrees with what I said about our Norwich values, our Norwich mission, and being a good member of the Republic, or returning to their home country to serve, that they feel like they belong. And to the extent that we create a culture that does that, I think we're successful. And if we ever tolerate or put up with or foster a culture that is any different than that, I, as the chair of the board, will, I don't want to use the word violently, but vehemently oppose anything like that. Let me also say that as somebody that is not an academic or been in academia for long, there's a lot of federal laws and a lot of protections under Title IX, Title VI, et cetera, that we have to live by that aren't really in the media right now or being talked about. And so, it's the kind of situation where it's a very, very conflicted time. And, the message to Team Norwich is we want everyone to feel like they belong. Yeah. And I'll stop there.
That's great. I'll restate it in just a little bit different way in the way I talk about it. Norwich has got a proven track record of bringing people on that are good citizens for this country. Whether it's celebrating 50 years of women at Norwich, women in the Corps of Cadets, 2 years before anybody else, and we did it with no drama. Whether it's celebrating Doc Martin, a student of color at a time when that didn't just happen. And not only did he come here, but he thrived here. We don't need a lot of people telling us how to do it, because Norwich has got a proven track record of doing it, because you come here and you belong. If you are a Norwich student, you belong to Norwich and part of that community. So I've got great confidence that we hit exactly what it is that these programs try and get at.
Yeah, and kind of highlighting some of those points, we had a question that came in from overseas saying, are you aware that there are 4 ministers within the Indonesian government that are Norwich grads, one of
Yes.
them being the foreign minister?
Yes.
We're proud of that.
Yeah.
I don't know who sent that in, but if it's Trevor Albertson and you're listening, thanks for sending that in, because he actually texted me and called me and said, hey, you got to hear about this, and he sent me all the stories. And it's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
Go Norwich.
Yeah. So, I got a call from Phil Sussman on it.
Yeah.
And then I got to tell you, I've got at least 6 emails from folks that take great pride in the fact that their classmates, our fellow alum, have achieved a notable level of success in the Indonesian government. So we'll be reaching out. We've already sent some thank you notes, and we want to make sure. And I, from everything I hear, I don't know any of them personally, but from everything I hear, they all value their Norwich connection, and they're certainly valued by their classmates and fellow alum.
Fantastic. Status on plans for a rifle range. I feel that Norwich, as a military college, should have a rifle range and have marksmanship courses for all cadets.
Yes. Well, it wouldn't be fair. When I was here, we had one.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely awesome. And so I don't know if you want to. This
I
is
would
not
love-
governance. So-
Yeah, no, I would love to have a rifle range. To be honest, I've talked, I won't put them on the spot, I've talked to a couple of alum who are very interested in developing Northfield in particular, but doing projects like this for Norwich. We have a great rifle team, and I would like to see them have a range here. And it helps our military training as well. Yeah, I'd love a rifle range. That's a great opportunity for somebody to sponsor that effort. And, so.
Do you have a to-do list going on there?
Yeah, I do. It's quickly growing.
Yeah.
I'd love one.
All right. We had another kind of similar question, except about the band. Please give a brief update about the Norwich Band, including their 2025 future events, present size, and future growth. And I have the update, so I will tee up what we know in terms of facts, and I'll allow you to comment
Okay.
on it.
Good.
We have about 20 returning band members. We also have about 20 incoming rooks that have already been identified. Last year, 2 big events, Plattsburgh, New York, parade in the fall, and then in Boston, they participated in the St. Patrick's Day parade. Yep. 2 smaller events in Westerlo, the Hometown Heroes Parade, and then also the Army and Navy Academy in Carlsbad, California. I have a feeling you had something to do with that, sir. And then just the multiple things on campus, because in addition to just the band, we have a string ensemble, the pipes and drums, and the Commandant's Choral Cavaliers.
I'm glad they gave you those extras out there. I'm not a musician, but I love music. One of the great things, as I wrapped up my career, a lot of you know I lived on the Marine Barracks at 8th and I, which is the home of, not just the Marines that do all the things inside Washington, D.C., but it's also home of the President's Own, the Marines Band. And so I literally woke up every morning to the President's Band practicing outside my window. It was a pretty awesome experience, and I have a huge love for people with that kind of talent. We have the nation's oldest collegiate band, and I celebrate that in a big way. But it goes beyond just the marching band that you see at the football games and the rest. And there's a degree of enthusiasm that drives. But let me talk a little bit about those last programs that you talked about. Joshua Smith, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel from this last year, resurrected the string ensemble. Over 100 years, we have not had a string ensemble play on campus. And I'm proud of Josh for doing that. But more importantly, the enthusiasm that those musicians, both Corps students and civilian students, had as they were giving that first concert of our string ensemble in over 100 years. Give you another example. So we had an event here at Woodbury Hall. Some gracious donors bid on a dinner with the president and his wife, and hockey game. So we did the hockey game first. We were coming back over for dinner. And as we walked in, Karen got with the pipe and drum band, and they were lined up on the circular staircase. And as the guests were walking in, they started, the bagpipes started playing. If you have not walked into a house with bagpipes screaming at you, you're missing something. But these are student-driven events, right? And they're done by our musicians, and they add this flavor to the campus that is wonderful. Very poignantly, unfortunately, we did 3 Echo Tap ceremonies this year, 2 for some of our students and 1 for Gordon Sullivan. And the pipes played, and it is an incredibly haunting thing when they do that. And that combined with the traditional Echo Taps that goes on adds a very poignant flavor to a storied tradition here at the school. Very proud of the band. Very proud of our students that are bringing in these other elements of the band. They've got my full support, and I want to grow them in any way we can.
And what great ambassadors! I mean, just like with a military band, I mean, they represent the school in some pretty unique places. The Boston St. Patrick's Day parade. I mean, awesome to have Norwich presence.
We didn't get invited to the inauguration this year, but 2 administrations ago, I had the opportunity to be in one of the escorts. And got to see the band march in front of the president during the inauguration ceremony. Those are the kinds of things that we engage in, and we'll continue to do so, and I'll grow them wherever we can.
I heard you playing the piano earlier, Al. Are you trying out for the band?
No. and the band would vote me out. But they, I mean, what we didn't talk about is the fun factor, and having a band at a football game. I mean, that's what college is all about. So not just football, but
they play basketball games. I want to get them into the hockey arena. I know we've got some great music and everything, and it brings a big vibe to the hockey arena. But I'd love to put the band in there too, and have that happen. So
that would be cool. All right. Well, we're down to about the last 5 minutes, and I want to turn it over to you all for some final thoughts. Before we do that, I want to thank everyone who sent questions in, and if we didn't get to it, I'm going to respond to you here in the next couple days. We're going to continue this town meeting cadence. It seems to be going pretty well. We got a lot of great feedback. And I'm going to tease the next one because I was able to book like the star. I've got Bill McCullough to commit to doing a post-Rook Week town hall in the fall. We'll get the real deal update from a great Norwich name.
And that's you scored a coup on that one because I know Bill is hard to get, and so hey, I'm just going to wrap up real quick by saying thanks for doing this. This does take a lot of work. It doesn't just happen to the crew. You all don't see behind the camera here. Thank you guys for what you do, taking time out of the late in the day for all of you. And I'm just going to wrap it up by saying I am excited to work with our new chair, and it's been great learning this together, and I'm looking forward to what the future's bringing out.
Thank you. So I'll just hit on a couple quick things. So first of all, to all the trustees that are watching or will watch, I'm just grateful. I say that as the chair, I say that as a teammate, and I also say that on behalf of the institution. Volunteer group of folks that work tirelessly to try to govern this storied institution. So tip of the hat to all of you. Second, I have to say that Norwich had the sun shine on it the day that John Broadmeadow accepted the presidential role. I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision to come back out of retirement, but we are lucky to have you. And I've now gone to 2 conferences with John, countless hours in board meetings and other activities, and a humble servant leader that is so focused, it will just blow your mind the more time you spend with him. So thank you for your service to Norwich. Brian, thank you for what you've done here tonight. Thank you for what you do every day. I'm so glad you decided to join the team. We needed your help, and I'm glad you landed here. Last thing I'm going to say is, again, to the faculty and staff of Norwich, debt of gratitude to all of you. You make Norwich what it truly is every single day with your hard work, your focus, and your service. And so from me to you, just a big thank you. So that's pretty much it, Brian.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you. It's good to see you all.
Norwich forever.